it's the same for me when I started in Stellenbosch. I said, let's get the basics right. Make sure the streets are clean, the water runs, the small things, so that people can see that this is a working municipality, that the potholes is full, that there is actually things working. Let's get that before you start with the nice to haves, because there's no point in having all the nice to have and your basics isn't right. People need to know if I'm going to open the tap, there's going to be water.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are nearing the end of this amazing series on 100 years of women in law. Today, we have a very special guest, a person who is sitting currently in one of the richest municipalities in South Africa, Stellenbosch Municipality. She is the municipal manager. And today, we're going to reflect on her journey. So, Geraldine, thank you for taking the time to talk to us about women in the legal profession and the willingness to share your journey. So let's start at the beginning. Where did it all start for you? Who are you? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? And how did you get to where you are today? Just briefly.
Thank you. I grew up in a small town called Wellington in the heart of the Boland. I went to primary school at Pogeding Primary School, which is like one of the oldest schools in Wellington. At the time when I started in Sub A in 1979, the school was 100 years old at that point in time, and I did my high school at Weltevrede Senior Secondary in Wellington. Growing up in Wellington is obviously in the heart of the Cape Winelands, as you mentioned before, and I was exposed to a lot of things as I grew up, because I grew up with my grandmothers, both from paternal and maternal side. My mom died when I was very young, and we were 3 girls, so my grandmothers took care of us. And as a result of that, I grew up in households with very phenomenal, strong women. In a sense that I was taught that as a child, from a very young age, that you have to make your own way. You cannot depend on anyone for anything in life. You have to go and get it yourself. Both my grandmothers, extremely phenomenal women. They worked very hard and they reared their children by themselves, and in our case, also their grandchildren.
So, in this difficult situation that you grew up, what are some of the things that you experienced, and how did that eventually influence you ending up at UWC doing a degree in law?
Well, as a child, there was 2 things I always wanted to do. I'm not sure who influenced me or if I was influenced, but as far as I can remember, I either wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer. And as I grew up and I was exposed to blood, I knew doctor wasn't going to be it. And I thought, no, the law. But more interestingly, growing up in the society I grew up, you saw a lot of abuse. You were exposed to a lot of things. And I thought to myself at the time, because I grew up in the 80s, I was in high school in the 80s, and the Boland region, if you can know, it was very politically active at the time, especially in the high schools at the time. So I had these bright ideas about human rights law, and this is what I wanted to do. Because as a child also, even on primary school, we were all exposed to work. I used to work holiday times on the farms. And at that time, people didn't care about child labor. Actually, they preferred it, because the farms that we used to work on was, they did table grapes. So at those days, you had to put a little cover over the grapes, and kids' hands are small, so you can do that easily and you don't spoil the grapes, etc. So those are the environment that I grew up in as a child, because we had to work from a very young age, to assist and to help in terms of the household. So it's not an issue that I grew up rich or stuff. We were a working class family, and that is what I was taught. From a very small age, everything you want in life, you have to work for.
So then you decide, look, I need to do something. And then you ended up at UWC. You decided to study law. So tell us more about that particular journey. How was it like? Because it was during a very exciting time in South Africa's history.
Yes, indeed. I remember I applied at various institutions, and UWC was my preferred institution. There was no other place I wanted to study law. It was the University of the Left. I wanted to be part of that transformation that our country was about to take. And I recall the day one of the other institutions phoned and said, we need to know if you're going to come because otherwise we're going to give your place up. And I was almost in tears because I haven't heard from UWC. And that afternoon they called me to say, you've been accepted at the law school at UWC. I remember how elated I was and happy I was. So being exposed to those cultures, because you must remember I came from a Afrikaans background. Afrikaans is my mother language, and then having to come at the university, being exposed to various cultures, having to do all my classes in English was quite a transformation for me. And being involved at the time, but I was so excited. I started being involved in street law project because I wanted to make that difference where the law students actually went to schools and started teaching school children about voters' rights and the importance of voting and also the importance of human rights and what it meant. And also explaining that it's not only a right, but there's also certain responsibilities and accountabilities that comes with that rights. And I think that is sometimes people forget that there is accountability with everything that you have to do. And there's also responsibility as you as a citizen in terms of those rights. So that was my career, or rather my journey into law. And at the time, I was extremely fortunate being at UWC at that time in the law faculty. I had the likes of Dula Mwade, Kade Asmal, Yvonne Magoro, a lot of those professors that was there that was instrumental in the change of what happened in our country subsequently and ended up at constitutional judges, etc. Albie Sachs was also there at the time. And that was a time of Professor Jakes Gerwel and Professor Duran that was at the steer of the university in terms of the leadership of the university. So it was an exciting time for me, and I think I'm very fortunate that I was at the university at that particular time, and also being in the law faculty. I think at the time the law faculty was rated amongst the best in the country. And that's the era that I came from, and I'm very proud of that.
Ladies and gentlemen, UWC certificates are the wall full is full on this wall. So it. I'm from UWC, so and I got my degrees at UWC, so I feel at home when I see those certificates on the wall. So you finish then your degree, the amazing journey, you were taught by some of the best legal scholars, your time at UWC, and then you decided, I'm going to have a bite at the apple. And so you decided that you want to get into law and get your hands dirty. So tell us, reflect on us that journey after you completed your degree.
So after I completed my degree, obviously the choice was to get your articles done and get admitted as an attorney. So I did a School of Legal Practice at UCT at the time. And from UCT, I then started, and you would not believe it, but I did my articles in Stellenbosch. And it's always interesting that my career journey to take a complete 360 and I'm back in Stellenbosch. So that's what I did in terms of my articles. And eventually I ended up as a prosecutor, a public prosecutor in Paarl. And that was quite a catalyst for me in terms of deciding what the future of my career will be. Because being a public prosecutor, being exposed at the time to a lot of maintenance issues, being exposed. I was for a brief time also dealing with a lot of GBV issues, and also in terms of children's issues and, offenses against children. And some of that was just extremely emotionally draining for me. I couldn't believe the realities of some people and the circumstances they have to live in. And at that point in time, I thought to myself, I cannot keep on doing this. I want to be part of the change. I want to be part of making that change. So my journey went to the provincial government of the Western Cape, where I worked in the legal services department. And at that stage, I decided, let me go do my master's in law. And it was quite interesting at the time. I never thought of ending up in local government, but one of my electives was on intergovernmental relations. And I remember we were like four ladies in the class that did it, and most of us were in the legal profession at the time and not really interested in intergovernmental relations, but we just did criminal procedure with Professor Nico Statler, and we liked his way of teaching, etc. And then we found out that he was going to be the next lecturer for intergovernmental relations. So all of us did the subject, but I then discovered my niche. And I then realized if you want to make a change, you need to make it at local government level. So when I finished my LLM, I then went to work at the Department of Local Government, and it was at a very critical stage when I started there, because that was in 2000 when the new local government dispensation came in and the new municipalities was created as we know it now, the wall-to-wall municipalities. That journey didn't take so long. Lo and behold, I ended up back at the university. So for 2 years, I was a senior researcher at the Community Law Center, which is now the Duloma Center, and basically focusing on local government and the local government project that was part of the Community Law Center at the time, and working a lot with municipalities at the time. That journey eventually took me to Drakenstein Municipality. At the time, local government went into a very particular process whereby they had to transform, and they also had to get their laws and their policies in line with the new legislation, in particular at the time, the Municipal Finance Management Act. And I was then requested to come and assist the municipality to get those policies and laws and committees, etc., in place, and making sure that the municipality was compliant with the new legislation, in particular your Financial Management Act. So it was about your procurement committees, and it was about getting your policies in place to make sure that we were compliant. Strangely enough, I then moved over to Gauteng. I made a brief turn in Gauteng, which I'm forever grateful to, because I learned so much while I was there. I mean, I worked at the Department of Local Government in the Department of Gauteng, or rather in the province of Gauteng. And there I worked a lot on policy issues and governance issues. But the interesting part of the journey was I worked on a lot with metros and understanding the nuances and the importance of service delivery and budgeting, and understanding this new massive animal that needs to deliver services to a host of people in various areas, which is so different from one another, and the needs are so vastly different from one another. So that's where I was. I say it was a brief visit, but actually it wasn't. It was about 9 years. My grandmother, which I absolutely adore, became ill at the time, and I thought, no, this is the time for me to come home. So when an opportunity opened up at the city of Cape Town, I then immediately took it and worked at the city of Cape Town for 2 years. Unfortunately, I was retrenched at the time because they went through a restructuring process at the city, and I then joined the Stellenbosch Municipality. So it's very strange that it wasn't the plan; it just happened.
But I love your journey. Your journey is an amazing thing, and There's an Afrikaans saying, or not an Afrikaans saying, it's actually in Darlene Matisse' book, Krangani Bos, um, where she say life is a crooked circle, or it leaves us a skiver circle. And it's a journey of Saul Barnard and Oakwood in the forest. So this elephant, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't read the book, takes Saul Barnard on a journey through the forest, and there's a circle in the forest, and the s- the circle is always bigger, but it always comes back closer to a point, and it gives him a deep reflection. And this is what I'm actually picking up from your journey, is that you started in the Cape Winelands, you move away from the Cape Winelands, you came back to the Cape Winelands, you move away from the Cape Winelands, you came back to the Cape Winelands, and now you're sitting here in an executive management position. You're one of the few women municipal managers. So tell us about the importance of women in executive leadership positions.
I think women in executive leadership is extremely important. And I think I'm one of the very fortunate executives in a sense that my executive mayor is also a woman and also a woman in law for that matter. So we understand the same language, we understand the same moral compass, we have the same ethics in terms of what we want to get done and what we want to do. And that is so important in this environment that we find ourselves in, that is always fraught with corruption or the perception of corruption in some instances. But there is, I think we need to be honest with one another and say there is a lot of mismanagement in some corners that needs to be addressed. But why is it important for women? Because women just approach things very differently from our male counterparts. And by that, I'm not saying what the male counterparts doing is wrong. All I'm saying is we just look at things very differently. We are much more empathetic to circumstances, and also because of our own experiences and knowing the importance of why is it important to have a particular service at a particular point and not there. Issues around safety, because as a woman you're also a mother, you think about what is important for my child. Is it important for me to have running water and electricity for the kids to study at night? Where is my ablution facilities? Is it safe for my children to be there? So those are the things that we just look at very differently. And when we need to make budget decisions, what do you prioritize in terms of that? So like I said, I'm extremely fortunate in a sense that I have also a woman in leadership that has the same understanding or the same ideas in terms of where we want to take service delivery, but also just to take this municipality into the future and into the 21st century.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can attest to this. I came in this morning, and her whole team is strong, capable women, and they are running the show. Like I said to you before, Stellenbosch is one of the richest municipalities in South Africa, and they're running the show. Things are working. This place is clean. It's beautiful, and I've been trying to get her to come to Machikama municipality because we need a capable leadership in Machikama. So obviously, you are a hard worker. You do a lot of things, but you're also a woman in law. So you have this work ethic. You're working hard, but you have this passion and love for law that you said you figured it out during a certain period of time in South Africa's history. So now that you have this journey and you've walked it a little bit, and see what it's all about. Um, Woman in law, 100 years this year, century old. How do you see their journey for women? Will there be a next 100 years? Will it be better? What's your take on the next 100 years of women in law?
Before I answer your question, I think I just need to address that misnomer that Stellenbosch is the richest municipality in the country. I think we just manage our funds better. So I just have to rectify that. The second issue for me is if we look at the past 100 years, yes, there has been a lot of we've grown as a country in terms of where we are, in terms of gender equality, and particularly in the law also. But was it enough is the question. Did it have the impact we wanted to have? If we look at our country at the moment, 1 in 3 women have been subjected to abuse in some form or other. And that's irrespective of economic standing, that is irrespective of racial or cultural divisions. 1 in 3 women, we have the highest GBV rate in the world, if you want to mention that. So where are we going wrong as a country? What is it that we need to do to change that? And then you need to start asking yourself, is it only government's responsibility, or how do we address this issue? Because for me, it starts right at the foundation of society. It starts in the family units. If you look in our communities and the communities that I come from, you have woman-headed households. You have single mothers mostly. And they are mostly women that have to work because there is no other person that works in the household. So they are not there always to be that parent and giving the guidance. And our children tends to not be busy with the correct things. And I'm asking myself, why are we raising a fatherless society? And one of the projects which really inspired me in Stellenbosch is where they started with the Gentlemen's Club, where men in communities actually started saying, how can I mentor a fatherless child to make sure that that child get the necessary guidance in terms of where they want to be. So our moral fiber as a society has completely disintegrated. And I think we need to start looking at that and making sure that we get back to the basics in terms of that. It's the same for me when I started in Stellenbosch. I said, let's get the basics right. Make sure the streets are clean, the water runs, the small things, so that people can see that this is a working municipality, that the potholes is full, that there is actually things working. Let's get that before you start with the nice to haves, because there's no point in having all the nice to have and your basics isn't right. People need to know if I'm going to open the tap, there's going to be water. People need to know that my garbage is going to be collected, that I can be proud of my environment that I live in. Because once you have that, you create that pride as well. And I think it's important that we need to understand as a society, government can't do it all by itself. So I think if we want to take this in the next 21st century, we really need to start looking at how we can do things differently. But for me, it is starting right at the basis and at the foundations of our society, and see how we can fix that moral fiber of our society again. And, the one thing I recall, and I think as a country, if I can just think back, is we had a very strong civil society prior to the new democracy. And that's when the new dispensation came in, kind of disintegrated. And I think that is one of the things I would like to inflict on which we as a country did wrong, because nobody kept government accountable. That accountability, I think you're starting seeing things coming up now, but we had to keep that actually, because most of the people at that stage that was at the lead of those civil societies joined government. And a lot of those civil societies kind of disappeared that kept government accountable. And I think we must be honest with ourselves and say, have we as a country, after 30 years of democracy, actually made a change? And I have to sit here and be honest with myself and say, we have failed. We have failed. There is so many things wrong with this democracy of ours that we need to change. But as a citizen, what am I doing about it? How am I going to see the change that I want to see? And I think it's up to each one of us to say, let's change. Let's be the change we want to see. Because if you are not going to do it, this country is going to go down. And for me, I have the instances now. We had major floods in June, and now just last week we had a lot of floods again, and we needed to look at it. But people need to understand government cannot do it on its own. We need assistance. We need communities also to take accountability and responsibility for some of the stuff that needs to happen in their communities, and actually take the hands of government and take the hands of the municipalities to assist with some of the issues that we need to address.
Geraldine, I am so glad that you are saying that we in society also have a role to play, and not just government. Because it's important that we have as much roles and responsibilities as governments have roles and responsibilities. We have rights, governments have rights. So sometimes we want to outsource everything to government, but we throw a paper in the street, and there's just you walk past the bin. You could have put in there. You drive on a sidewalk with a truck. Now you're damaging that infrastructure. It rains. It damages the infrastructure even. So there is this social responsibility that you're alluding to, and I'm with you on that one. We have to seriously, as citizens, start thinking about our role to play and help government come alongside government to do all of this. The final question, and this is for young people. Reflecting on your journey that is dominated by men, what advice would you give to not just young women, but also young men who wants to follow in your footsteps?
I would say that the most important thing for me is that they need to know what they want in life. They need to understand what it is and also how do I get where I want. So I need to see myself at a particular point in my life, and then you need to start working backwards in terms of getting to that and putting that in place. One of the things that I'm forever grateful for is that my law background assisted me greatly every day in this job, because we work in such an overregulated environment, and you need to make sure that you are compliant with legislation, etc. And that's why my legal knowledge stood me in good standing in terms of this position. But that's not necessarily where you have to start off to be at this point in time and where you are at. There is a lot of institutions. Get involved in mentorships, get involved in job shadowing from a very early age so that you can understand what is it, is this actually what I want to do with my life going forward? And then start with that journey in terms of getting the necessary qualifications to get there. That is my advice. And also take up the opportunities that comes your way. You know, one of the things that as a mother, I sometimes think I did my children a grave injustice because I wanted to give them everything I never had, and I actually made life easier. But looking back, I'm saying to myself, what I went through in terms of growing up actually shaped me into the person I am today. And I actually denied them that opportunity. And obviously, you know, hindsight is perfect eyesight. And I have started with that in terms of saying, no, 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 kick out of the nest. You need to start moving and getting and doing things for yourself. But the sad part for me is that we tend to have a great deal of entitlement as a society and as citizens, and as I am entitled to this, I'm entitled to that, not thinking that I actually have to work for what I want. And that is what I would like to see, is that people start and really putting a little elbow grease there and do the little part that you need to do to make it better for yourself.
Geraldine, this was an absolute pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, came in here this morning very friendly. They're actually laughing in this office. I thought it was going to be a serious governmental organization. No, they're laughing. They're making jokes. So it's a very relaxing environment. So I wasn't nervous. So Geraldine, thank you for the hospitality. I appreciate it, and thank you for joining us in this amazing series.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.